all my crafty people out there. I am coming at you with a second video regarding upcycling men's shirts that I've thrifted into children's clothes. Now, we did a dress the last time, and I think it turned out pretty cute. That was for my granddaughter, so these shorts will be for my grandson. All right, this is the traced copy of the 4T that I'm going to be using, and the pattern I'm going to be using has it's seen better days. The pattern number is 6880, and it's a NewLook, and it looks like this in the front. Now, of course, you could use any shorts pattern you wanted to do these, because it's just a matter of using this shirt for the fabric that's in it to make whatever I need. As long as the patterns fit on the shirt and make a good cut, we're good to go. So these are my 4Ts. All I need is 2 pieces, the front and the back, and these will be elastic waist. So we are just going to be folding over a casing in the top. We will have to hem the bottom of the pants, but I'll show you an easy way. We'll just serge and fold. I don't do the 1/4 inch hem if I don't have to. And I've got my instructions out over here as well. So these are out here. Somehow this got cut. I actually don't know how that happened, but you know, again, had this pattern forever. So, the great reveal, the shirt we are going to be working with. Now, be prepared. I've been in wild pattern mode, and this is no exception. Now, this is a ship pattern, nautical pattern, and it is big, so I am concerned that it will not come through well enough on this pattern, but I'm gonna test it out just with a couple of pieces, and I think we'll get enough of the pattern, like that ship right there, that it'll be really cute. The thing we're going to do though, I love these 2 pocket shirts, so I've got 2 pockets, and these will end up being the pockets in the back of the shorts. My grandson loves pockets, and this is an easy way to put a pocket in without having to actually sew it in. So from here, you know what I'm going to do first. I'm going to cut up the sides, and I'm going to go up here. I am probably not going to cut up the sleeve. I'm not going to cut up the sleeve. I'm just going to cut the sleeve completely off, because sometimes, especially in these bigger shirts, these sleeves are big enough to make little shorts of their own, and I may be able to make some for my granddaughter. Even though they're wild, they're good for playing in. So let's get started. First thing first, I'm going to cut up the sides and open this shirt up to make it easy to use the fabric that's in it. Okay? Get my scissors, and again, I'm going to be using elastic at the top, and we're going to use good old no roll 1-inch elastic. You can buy this just about anywhere, all the way from Walmart to Joann's, whatever you've got in your area. So let's start. Again, I like to cut on the side of the fold. It seems to be thinner over here instead of beside the stitching. Honestly, it doesn't really matter. So we're going to cut up the side. And once we cut this up, we'll be ready to lay our pattern out. Sometimes you just got to work on holding it. And this is nice, thick fabric. It was obviously well loved because the collar is pretty shot. And again, I'm going to cut right underneath where that sleeve meets the seam. I'm going to cut the sleeve off separately. So I'm going to cut the sleeve like this. And that way we'll save that sleeve not only for the potential of a whole piece of fabric, but also because we may be able to make little shorts out of it. Or if we wanted to use a different shirt or different fabric, even a piece of regular purchased fabric, we could make some wild sleeves on a little girl's dress. In the last video, which if you haven't seen it, I will link it below in the comments. In the last video, we took a man's shirt and changed it into a little girl's dress. And we used the short sleeves to make the sleeves on the dress, and that prevented us from having to do a casing or hemming. It's a nice little shortcut that these shirts can provide if cut properly and utilized. So now we got the sleeve off. I'm going to cut the other one off, and we're going to come back and lay the pattern out. Okay, this is going to be just a little tricky, and I say that because when the pockets are really big like this, which they're adorable as far as going on the behind, but it's hard to get this pocket on this little back end of these shorts. I have to make sure I got enough for my seam allowance on both sides, and I may have to wiggle that a little bit, but if I put my thumb down, I know I've got a thumb's worth here and a thumb's worth here, and although that's going to be tight with the serger, you know, I have the flexibility to make sure that that's lined up properly. Now, the other tricky part about this particular pair, obviously I'm going to have to cut the two back sides one at a time, as opposed to folding my fabric and just cutting them all at once, because I don't want to take the chance of this tight fit not working. So I'm going to try and I'm going to pull it down, because we got to get that casing in the top too. So the casing's got to fit up top. So I'm thinking I've got about almost 2.5 inches there. I might need to bring it down just a little bit more. And of course, as you bring it down on the pattern, you give yourself a little more width here for the pocket. Not much, but a little bit. So this is a big pocket. But if you look, if I fold over this top, just does meet the top of that pocket, which means I'm going to pull it down just a smidge more, because I want that 1-inch pocket to have plenty of room without meeting my pocket. The 1-inch casing, I should say, for the elastic. So I just keep pushing it up here, kind of judging it, and I think that might be as far down, maybe a little bit more. Then I'm going to push that pocket to the bottom. Again, I still have to have room for a hem, which I usually like a nice little healthy hem, mostly because it's just easier. I'm all about ease. And the other thing you got to watch, you got to make sure you don't run into this seam where your sleeve was, because it's thick and you don't want to get that in your way. So I think we are about set, and I'm kind of lining this edge up with this placket, the button line, so I can gauge a kind of a straight line. I don't want it to be crooked. I don't want the pockets to go wonky on the back. So now I've got to go get my pins that, of course, I left on the other table, because that's what I do. Tell you what, it would be smart, and I would recommend this. Get you 2 pin cushions. One for the cutting table, one for the sewing table. Makes it a lot easier. Alright, I'm just going to start over here. I'm going to try and make sure that's that line is good with the pocket, the placket for the buttons over there. Kind of give me a, I'm pinning over the pocket because again it's pretty wide. I would usually use a shirt with a smaller front pocket, but this one just spoke to me. It's wild, I know. And it does have, of course, some notches. And that's just typical to make sure you're lining everything up. Now I will cut the notches out on this particular piece, partly because it lines up the inner crotch together and it just is helpful. And again, we will cut notches out, not in, because I don't trust that I wouldn't get in my seam allowance, especially one that's going to be as close as this with this pocket. But we are going to make the best of these big pockets, and hopefully my grandson will enjoy having them. He loves a pocket. Unfortunately, that means he puts stuff in the pockets. But that's his mother's problem when it comes to the wash. Not mine. Alright. And one more over here on this notch so I don't have trouble cutting around it. This is actually, I think, a triple notch, but, you know. So now you can see I have pinned this pattern. This is the back to the pocket area, and this is the edge of my pocket, so I have plenty of room to make my casing for my elastic. And this is the edge of my pocket, and this is the edge, and it's about the same distance here, about a thumb width, which should give me a seam allowance that I can use on the serger. And we're going to cut this out, and then we'll go to the other side and cut it out as well. We'll just have to be careful and try to get them lined up. Might use the hemming ruler to gauge whether or not we have same amount of room between the top of the pattern and the pocket. This is kind of a hard notch to pull out to cut out because it's right up against the seam. So we're just gonna make the best of it. Now I have heard of people using weights to hold their pattern down instead of pins. They feel like they don't get a true cut with pins. I can't imagine myself doing that. Alright. And just a straight cut across the bottom of these pants, shorts. And then we're going to turn a little so I can cut right down the side. And here's another notch, which again we're just going to slip out, cut that notch, cut back into our line. Make sure our fabric is as straight as possible. There we go. Alright, that's our first piece, and I'll show you what it looks like when the pattern's removed, because I got to put the pattern on the other side anyway. And when we remove the pattern, oh, another good thing about these magnetic, just pick them up. Voila! There is our little pants back with this pocket. There should be enough room for the seams. Now it'll be snug, and the pocket will cover his whole back end, but I think it'll be cute. We got plenty of room up here for the casing, And we have plenty of room down here for him. So I'm going to get the other one cut out, and then we're going to start working on the serger. Okay, I just wanted to show you this real quick. What I decided to do, instead of using the paper pattern for the back and trying to line it up on the pocket, I took the pattern piece that I've already cut out of the fabric and lined the pocket up all the way around the one that I'm cutting on, and that should give me a better fit, and I won't have to worry about measuring and wiggling and all that. This pocket is laying right on top of the other pocket, and I've pinned it down, and I'm going to use the already cut piece as the pattern. I think that'll make this work a lot better. Just wanted to show you that. Okay, I think those came out nice. The pockets look like they line up pretty well this way. So I think that the idea of putting the pattern on top of the other one was a good idea. Now, just remember, as you can see, these face the opposite way. So when I put this pattern on there to cut the other one out, I had to have them facing each other. You're always going to have right sides to right sides or wrong sides to wrong sides. That helps you get your, well, it's not helping, it has to be done in order to get the pattern to come out right. So now I've got the shirt. This is the back of the shirt. It's still pretty busy, but the pattern is large. So I'm not going to fussy cut and worry too much about what I'm getting on this pattern. I do like the sailboat here, and on the other side there's an actual top side look of the inside of the boat. So I think I'm going to try and capitalize on those two pieces, and I'm going to utilize as much of my fabric as I can, or should I say I'm going to make sure that I have some fabric left over. I was always taught to maximize the use of your fabric and save your scraps. So again, this is folded. They're wrong sides together because it's just the back of the shirt, and I'm going to start pinning pretty much just where it lays. I think that the sailboat will show up underneath here, so that at least one side will have a neat pattern to it. I could fussy cut this. My daughter loves it when I say that, and be real specific and cut it twice like I did the back, but it's not that important, I don't think, and I will get a pattern out of both sides. So just gonna pin this, and I'm gonna cut it, and once I'm through cutting it, I will come back and we will start serging. One more thing before we go to the serger. I just wanted to show you where we're at pattern wise. We've cut out the two front and two back pieces of the pattern, and what we're going to do is we're going to sew the seam for the inner leg. Now that is a front and back piece, so what I mean by that is you have to line up a back with a front and a back with a front. Now generally when I cut these, obviously I'm either cutting them two sides together or two wrong sides, two right sides or two wrong sides together. So that's what they would look like when I finish cutting them. Say like this. Oh no, that didn't help. Like this. So this is what I look like when I unpinned them, right? So what I found, because not all of them will have a pocket and they look a lot alike other than the notches come in real handy here, is I will open up one side and then I will make sure I lay the other side right sides to right sides. So I know, and what I'm matching up is this little notch in what is called the inner leg seam. Okay? And that again is a front piece with a back piece. That's our first stitch. And once we've stitched that, then when we're at the serger, I'll show you, we're going to end up stitching the crotch line after we open it up, and you'll see how it's constructed on the serger a little easier. I just wanted to show you where we were on the actual pattern. It's page 4, and again we're right here sewing the inner seam. You see that? There you go. All right, y'all, let's go to the serger. Okay, back to our favorite machine, or one of my favorite machines, serger. And again, we have a front and a back together, and we are going to be starting off with this inner seam, the inner leg seam right here. It's easier to see there, this one. And we're going to do both of those, and then we're going to serge it's called the crotch line essentially. Alright, so these need to be lined up, and put them under the serger here. Now, I'm not going to take much off obviously with this serger, and it doesn't quite make a 5/8 inch seam allowance, which is the standard seam allowance for most clothing. But as I explained in the previous video, when you're making clothes, or when, especially these little kids' clothes, as long as you're consistent with your seam allowance, you will have things come out okay. So in other words, I don't want to put a 5/8 inch seam over here and a 1/2 inch seam over here. You have to be consistent. So using the serger and using the serger presser foot as my gauge for the seam also makes it consistent. So I have my fabric right up against this presser foot. So the blade is barely going to be touching this fabric, this seam. Before I finish that completely, I'm going to go ahead and pull my second piece over here and do the same thing, and just do a continual run of it, and pick it up right there. Make sure my seams are still lining up. Back and that little line between. So now we have this. We have this one. It looks kind of funny. I know when the seams are like this, it looks funny. And we have the other one. Front and backs have both been put together. So now what we're going to do, still right sides together, because you got to have right sides together. We're going to put both of them like this, and so it's front to front, back to back, and we're going to seam this inner crotch line. This is that's the best way to say it. And the notches match up because obviously we cut these pieces together, both fronts and backs. And we're going to go down. Again, I'm just that fabric right under my presser foot. So I'm not really cutting much off. Little teeny tiny strip. Now here, when you get to the crotch, where the inner seam is, I like to fold one way and the other way, so I get a little bit of a nice seam there. And also I pull my serger strings out so they get cut with the whole process. And there we go. I'm just making sure everything's still lined up. I check my seams regularly, especially right here around this pocket. I want to make sure I'm not missing out on anything here because it's so close to that pocket. But I want to make sure the seam is good. Let's see, it seems a little short for me there. There we go. Now, it did get a little fuzzy right there, but it caught it. You can always check and go back and check your seams. Now, this is the little behind seam, which obviously on a child gets a lot of wear and tear. If you wanted to, you could go back and put a second stitch just with the sewing machine, because the sewing machine's going to let you get a little closer to that pocket. We usually don't have pockets this big, but you can see how it kind of got a little fuzzy because the serger was stressing to get through there, but it did catch both sides. I will probably put a little seam down here, just a security seam, to make sure that that doesn't go anywhere. And it still looks funny, obviously, but then watch this. And we turn it right side out, and you turn it like this, and all of a sudden it starts to look like a little pair of shorts. So I'm going to go run a stitch on that crotch line just for security, and then we're also going to come back. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and serge. Now I serge the top of each of these pieces, which will be the fold over part of the casing for the elastic, and I serge the bottom where the legs are on each of these, so when I hem it, I don't have to make that 1/4 inch hem line. I'm just folding over and hemming. So I'm going to go ahead and serge those. Again, top, this is the top of the back, and all I'm doing is I'm not sewing anything together. I'm just making a serge line that'll keep it from fraying. And I'm going to do that to all the tops and the bottoms, around the legs and around the top where the elastic casing goes, just so I don't have to add that 1/4 inch, and when I fold it over, it's good to go. It doesn't need any extra. I can just run a stitch line right across the top and make the casing or the hem. Before I go over to the sewing machine, forgot one thing, very important thing. Now what I've done is I've put a serger line on both the top, where my elastic casing will be folded over, and both the bottom of the legs, where I'll be folding over for a hem. Now, what I forgot is the most important part over here on the serger. I've got these made to the point where I've got to sew up the side seam. And once I sew up the side seam, then I'll go over there and make my casing for my hem and my elastic. But this side seam is gonna make these look like shorts. So I'm gonna sew one really quick, hopefully. Gonna line it up, pull my serger threads out so they get cut off with the process. Good thing about these serger ends, I won't even have to knot these, which again, I don't know if that's the proper thing to do, because they'll be caught up in the casing and the hem. I'm gonna pull these. Whoop. That didn't help. Didn't have it secured yet. Alright, put these under here. There, that's secure. Now, just making sure they line up. Still got that big pocket. Alright, that's one side. Now we're going to sew this second side. Just pull my serger thread out there. And line this up underneath the serger foot. I'm just gonna make sure everything's meeting. There's a little bit of give down here. I'm just gonna pull it, make sure it's alright. Now we actually have a pair of shorts that looks like a pair of shorts. I always got confused when I was younger about the bloomers and pants and the way they looked when you first started putting them together. But now we have a little pair of shorts. So we're going to take these over. Actually, what I'm going to do first, and I'm not going to put this on film, but I'm going to, actually I think I will put this on film. I'm going to make the casing for the elastic, and I'm going to fold up this area for the hem. Now I'm using a good old hemming ruler, and I'll show you at least a couple of seconds of that. That way you'll understand what I'm doing to make the fold. I'll press it. I am going to use an iron this time. And then I'm going to go over to the sewing machine, sew down that casing and sew down that hemline, and run the casing with the elastic. Okay, now here's our pair of shorts turned inside out, and what I'm going to use is my good old faithful hemming ruler to gauge how much I want to hem up top to make our casing. Now remember, we're going to be putting a 1-inch elastic in here. Good old no roll 1-inch elastic. So we have to make sure that we got enough room for that casing, for that elastic in that casing, and hopefully we don't get into our pockets. Hopefully we gave ourselves enough room for that. I think we did. So a good rule of thumb is you want a little bit more, obviously, than the inch. So if we go with 1.5 inches, we may not even need the whole 1.5 inches. See, we'll make sure we got enough room for that seam and everything. So let's just start here. That is actually a pretty good 1.5 inches already. So let's check the side down here. That's a good 1.5 inches. That's a good 1.5 inches. We must have folded that just proper. Again, just what do we always do? Measure twice. We're not cutting this time, but we're going to make sure. We're going to take the good old iron. We're going to press that down. That is going to make it much easier to sew because it's already going to be pretty much in place. And we're also going to check the back, well, the front. So we're going to check this. And you see it's a little more than 1.5 inches here. So we're going to roll that up just a bit because I don't want too much. It's not quite 1.5 inches here. So the back is a little wonky. And we'll just, actually this is the front. Alright, there's good 1.5 inches. This needs to be pulled out just a smidge. There's my 1.5 inches. And there's a good 1.5 inches. So I just need to press that down just a little bit. Make sure that it's nice all the way around. So there's my 1.5 inches. And this will more than fit my elastic. As you can see, it'll go right in there. It's got room for me to put the seam here. So it'll go right in there. You don't want it too loose or the casing too big, because then your elastic, I don't know, it just too much play. I prefer to be fairly close. So, and then the only other thing we got to do is we're going to hem these pants. And like I was saying earlier, he's a little guy, so they don't need to be super long. And I think that if we hem them, let's see, what is that? Not quite. 1.25 inches about. So let's see if we can get it even all the way around. That's a little more than 1.25 inches. That's pretty good. 1.25 inches. And then we're going to hold that. And we're going to go check the other side. See, that's a little short. So it needs to be up a little bit. And this is just working with pants, patterns, legs essentially. It's your front and back are a little different because they're different parts of the body that they're fitting. So I think we got it. Again, it's play clothes, not the runway. Okay, we have our elastic casing pressed down and our hemline pressed down. All we have to do is finish them up. So I'm going to get my arm out of the way, the excess part of my arm, and I'm going to do little hems first because they're no stop. So I'm going to start on the center and the inner leg. That way, when I do meet those seams, if they don't meet perfect, or if they cross over, or if anything looks funny, it'll be on the inside seam of the little pants. So it's just a caution. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to put my presser foot, I'm going to use that to my advantage again. I'm going to put the edge of my seam or my fabric right up against the edge of my presser foot, and I'm leaving my needle in the center position. So I'm just going to start here. I'm not even going to back stitch because I'm going to come up over this stitch. Just keep going. Alright. And when you come to a seam, I just try to make sure it's folding comfortably over itself, because again, it's a serger seam, so they're not pressed open. over, and now I'm going to back stitch once, cut, and that's our first leg. Our second leg, again starting at the inner seam, and when I seam these down the crotch line, you'll see that I did alternate the two seam lines so they wouldn't bulk up. So I'm just going to be careful and make sure I keep it in that same alignment when I sew over the hem. And just keep going. Meet our last seam, back stitch once, cut, and there's our two hems. Now our pants are hemmed. Of course I will cut off the little pennants while I'm here. And the other leg. And there's. Alright, now those are the legs hemmed. Now I used white thread because it didn't seem to make a big difference with all the busy pattern on here. I could use thread the same color, but didn't have anything quite this peachy color. Now for the casing, I'm going to start in the back, and I'm going to leave a good size, maybe 2-inch opening for the elastic to go in. Now if you remember, we're kind of working with a tight elastic pocket casing, so I'm going to keep my presser foot right over the edge of the serge line that I made to protect it, and I'm going to change my needle position to be all the way to the left, so it is as close and falls actually in this serger line, and that way I'll make sure I have enough width for my elastic. Now when you first start your elastic casing, you want to stitch, back stitch. Make sure you get a couple of good stitches in there because that gets some wear and tear when you're putting the elastic in, especially this wider elastic. And then we just want to stitch around. This particular seam should be folding in, I think. Anyway, again, just make that seam fit comfortably. If you can alternate it from side to side where it doesn't get bulky, that's great. And we're coming around the front of the pants. I'm just going to keep on going. Just checking those seams to make sure that they're not bulky. To the back again. There's our pockets, and again we just want to leave a nice little healthy 2 inches should do it back, and that gives us some security. Okay, now we're going to run some elastic. This is some pretty big elastic, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold over the edge like that. I'm going to stick my safety pin in there like that, and we're gonna find that hole, which we left a 2-inch hole right here at the back of the pants. We're just gonna stick in our elastic, start threading it in. Takes a few strokes to try and get it in there. I'm just gonna push and pull. Shouldn't have too many problems with the seams as long as they lay flat. Again, a good reason to let them do what they want to do when being sewn down. No reason to fight them. Now, I'm going to take and I'm going to hold on to my end because I think I told y'all last time, if you let it go, you got to start all over. Just pulling it and give it a good, make sure I don't lose it. Switch hands. Make sure, because it's a wide elastic, it generally isn't going to get a chance to turn on you because there's not a lot of room in that casing. But it is something you want to be aware of. Make sure that you don't let it turn on you. So you can see it's same direction all the way around. Now I'm going to do what I did before. I'm going to pull this together and let the safety pin hold both ends. And I'm going to kind of give it a good stretch. Pull that safety pin back out as it tends to tuck in. And I'm going to keep from too much bulk. And I'm going to put these two inside right here. And I'm going to sew over, it's kind of hard to see, I'm going to sew over these two along with the fabric of the casing just to make sure I don't create a really bulky end there. And if you can get it directly under the seam, all the better. So I cut this elastic 19 inches, which is his waist, so I don't want to waste a lot of it with a bulky overlay. Now I'm going to put my needle back to the center point, and I'm going to go right as soon as I can. Come on. It's bulky, so it's not fond of it. I'm going to pick up my needle and give it a little bit more space. See if I can get that to work. There we go. And then I'm going to go back again. For some reason it doesn't mind going back, but it just doesn't like going forward. Not all the time. Now what I've done is I've secured that elastic, both sides together, right there on that back seam line where the pants meet. And then all I'm going to do is close up my casing. And again, my needle was in the far left position with my fabric directly under my presser foot. I'm going to catch up where my last seam was, where I ended it. Alright. And I'm just going to zip over this. And that should close up the casing. I'm going to clip our little pennants. Okay. From both sides. Oop. 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 And then we're going to pull, make sure our elastic evenly distributes. Turn inside out. And we have a brand new pair of shorts. Just wanted to show y'all a final shot. of our little shorts. This is the back with the creative, fun pockets that were on the front of the shirt. And then this is the front, which has got some nice print to it. I'm really kind of pleased with the way that came out. It even says sailing blueprint here. So that came out better than I was expecting with that large graphic. Just wanted to thank y'all for watching. Please make sure you subscribe and like, and we will continue making videos, or I will continue making videos, and hopefully you'll enjoy. Please let me know if there are any things that you might like to see that I might be able to create on film and help you out, and send me any questions you have.